Hello and welcome. This is Dawn Woleslagle with a video for Picket Fence Studios. Super excited today. We're going to be doing a little stripping, paper stripping that is. We're going to be pairing that with these large, beautiful dies from the current release. Now these guys really caught my eyes. This is the Two Big Beautiful Butterfly die set. They are gorgeous, intricate dies with a shadow die, and they are large. We're going to use the Big Beautiful Beetle die, another large, intricate die with a shadow die. The Happy Bumblebee family die set, this is another adorable little cutie. It's got 4 in here of varying sizes, and we're going to use the sentiments from Bugs and Kisses along with the coordinating die for cutting those out. And then from last month's release, we're going to borrow a sentiment here from Lick the Bowl. All right, and before we get started, I just wanted to show you a little bit more about these particular dies. So I mentioned that they were large. They're very generously sized. You get a shadow die, and then you get the detail die here. Now, this is a standard A2 panel, and I've cut this directly from the center. So you can see it is nicely sized to fill up an entire card front here. This would be perfect for a shaker card. If you like shaker cards, this is going to create a gorgeous shaker card. I'm not a huge fan of creating them. I like to look at them. I like to shake them. I don't like creating them. So we're not going to do that today. Instead, we're going to do another fun idea that showcases these dies beautifully as well. Here you can see how gorgeous all of that detail is and how it can fit right here inside. Or you can use a solid piece to back this with. So lots of options for this. So let's get into today's card. Today's card, like I mentioned, we're going to be creating paper strips. This is a great technique for packing a lot of color into a small area. And our finished cards today are going to be 4 inches by 4¼ inches, but they are going to be packed with fun and color. So I've picked a myriad of colors here in rainbow, and I am going to be cutting 1/4 inch strips from each. So I'm just using the grid there on the right side of my trimmer here. I will move it over to the first line, which is 1/4 inch. And I'm going to do this for each of the colors. Now I've taken a full sheet of cardstock from each color and cut that in half. And then I'm going to cut about 6 of these 1/4 inch strips from each color. This is going to give me more than enough to complete these cards and then some. So then I decided let's add some glitter. What better way than to use some glitter cardstock? So I pulled out a couple of sheets here that match these colors almost perfectly. I'll have all of the supplies that I used in the cards today linked in the video description below. So make sure you check there if you're looking for any of the supplies. So I've pulled out some colors here that are going to be good matches for what I've pulled out in my color palette. I can swap out that darker pink for one of the darker pink strips, and I can swap out the green for one of the darker green strips. You know what I'm saying. So anyways, I'm going to cut a couple of these into 1/4 inch strips as well, because I just want to add an accent of glitter. I don't want to glitter bomb the entire card. I just want to add some accents of glitter. So I'm going to cut a couple strips here, and you can see there that these are going to match perfectly, and I can just swap them out. All right, with all of our strips cut, it's time to assemble. So I've got a half a sheet of cardstock here, and I'm using a dry adhesive tape runner to just cover this entire card front. Now there's a couple different ways you could do this, and I will show you another way here in just a minute. But if you want to do this quickly, this will work. I don't use the tape runners too much anymore because I noticed over time the adhesive kind of fails and the cards can fall apart. But this is good for getting it to stick quickly. Now I am going to use liquid adhesive on the corners and up on the edges. Sometimes, again, those tape runners, they will skip. Since we're using 1/4 inch strips here, I need to make sure that I have adhesive covering the entire back. Stick It would be another really good choice to cover this cardstock with. So I'm going to do mine in a diagonal pattern here. So you can see I'm using my grid mat there to make sure I'm at a perfect diagonal. And then I'm just going to start laying these strips out color by color. Now you'll notice I'm struggling a little bit here. My hands are sticking to the paper and my paper is sliding all over the place. I put up with this for a couple more strips, and then it hit me like, duh, my paper inking palette. I need to put down my paper inking palette. This is going to hold everything in place for me while I lay my strips. So I pulled out the 5 by 6 inch paper inking palette. This is awesome. It holds paper in place. It holds your ink pads in place. There's a bunch of different uses for it listed on the back, including you could do, what is it, the mirror image stamping on this. You can also use this as a faux gel plate. There's a lot of different uses for it. But here, I was like, why am I chasing this paper around my desk? I'll just stick it on top of the paper inking palette, and then I can easily lay my paper strips down. Everything's going to be held in place. So from there, it was cake. It was just laying down one color after the next, and then every now and then I would swap out one of the colors for one of the colored glitter papers. This actually goes quite fast and is therapeutic. So after I was all done, I like to use my bone folder to burnish everything in place. Just make sure that all that adhesive is nice and secure, and then I'm going to flip it over and trim off the excess. I like to use my scissors to get one clean edge, and then I can use my guillotine trimmer to do the other four sides. And with that, our rainbow panel is complete. Ah, so pretty, so worth it. All right, so now we're going to trim that down to create a little focal panel for our note cards. So I'm going to trim this at 3¼ inches by 3 inches, I believe it is. And this is going to be our focal panel. It's going to sit behind our large die cuts. I've already cut down my card base here. This is a light gray cardstock. Again, it's 4 inches by 4¼ inches. And then we're going to mat that rainbow with a little bit of white cardstock. This is going to create a nice little white break between that gray and all of that bright color. All right, so now it's time to do our die cutting. I'm going to grab one of those two big, beautiful butterflies. You can see here all that detail. I'm going to cut 2 of those, and then we're going to adhere those one on top of the other. I like to stack my die cuts at least 2, most of the time 3, but for these, we're just going to do the 2. It's going to be plenty. I've got heavyweight cardstock here. And this die cut is so large and beautifully cut that it's going to carry pretty much the entire card. I didn't want to put anything else on the front, a sentiment or anything like that, because I didn't really think it needed it. So instead, what I'm going to do is put my sentiment on the inside of this one. All right, so I've pulled out my Misty, and we're going to use the Lick the Bowl stamp set here. I'm going to use that for you on your birthday, and I'm just going to stamp that right in the center, little towards the top. Give me room to write my own little personal message in there. And this would be a great card to include with like a gift bag. These would be great for lunch box note cards as well. Or if you just wanted to slip a little love note in your loved one's work bag, something like that. And out of habit, I'm just going to stamp this twice. I usually like to stamp twice with light pressure rather than once with super heavy pressure. I don't want a chance blowing out my stamp, pressing too hard, squishing it, and making the sentiment illegible. So now we just have to put these together, some little bit of foam tape on the back of this panel, and adhere it to the center, and this note card is done. So we'll review all of these at the end. I created another version of this one, but for now, let's move on to the second version. Now this is another way that you can adhere your strips. Just lay them out in the order that you want, and then add a fine line of glue, and then adhere each strip. So you can see here, this is a really quick way to do it as well, but I find this to be my preferred method if I'm only doing a couple of strips. If I'm doing a full sheet, I do like to lay down that dry adhesive first. So here I'll just quickly put these 6 in place, and then I can again flip this over and trim off any of the excess. And that's going to complete the background for this focal panel. Now for this one, we're going to use the big, beautiful beetle die. I've die cut that again twice from white heavyweight cardstock. And this one is a little more intricate, so you want to be delicate getting it from the paper. It cuts cleanly, but all of those little swirly bits, they like to hold on. So work that out and then adhere these one on top of the other again. I like to use tweezers when I'm working with these little delicate dies. It gives me somewhere to hold them, and then I work from the bottom up or the center out. For this one, I started at the bottom. There's a lot of these little freestanding areas, these little legs and antenna. So I want to make sure that I get those perfectly lined up. So I went from the bottom up, and then this one is going to live right here. Now I'm following the same basic layout for all of these cards, but just switching them up a little bit. Again, this helps me to create a lot of cards quickly, but they're all unique in their own way. So again, I'm using a little foam adhesive to pop up this panel. You could adhere this flat, but because this is such a simple design, I think that little bit of physical dimension really adds a lot to it. Adhere that right in the center, and then I'm going to offset that beetle. I've gone ahead and glued that, and while that was drying, I stamped and die cut my sentiment. Now for this, I used the Bugs and Kisses, and I heat embossed that in white on black cardstock, and then used the matching die to trim that out. And then I'm going to use a little bit of thin foam adhesive and liquid adhesive to adhere this. Because that bug is a little bit thicker, I needed it to clear the die cut there. So a little bit of foam tape on one side of that sentiment, and then a little bit of liquid adhesive, and that one is done. All right, so like I said, I created another version of each of these, so let's go ahead and review those. They are so pretty, you guys. So simple, so easy, but so pretty. The detail on these dies and their size make them a perfect candidate to use as a focal point all on their own, and you really don't have to do too much else. Again, a nice little rainbow pattern there in the back offsets that butterfly beautifully. For the second version, I used the other die in that set, and you can see this one's even larger and it still works beautifully. So these are so fun, so simple. Now, again, I don't like to make multiples of the exact same card, so we switched up the design just a little bit. I had lots of leftover strips. Here I used the Happy Bumblebee family die set, and these are adorable. You see that little heart? Ugh. Another sentiment from that Bugs and Kisses set, and I used only the pinks and oranges on that one. Here I made kind of like a more masculine or a traditionally masculine version using that beetle. I used the greens and the orange and the yellow, and I love this one too. Who would have thought that I would love a beetle die so much? All right, you guys, so that is it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Hopefully you learned something. If you're not already, make sure that you are subscribed so you don't miss future videos. As always, the featured supplies will be linked in the video description box below. I want to thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.